Hello, everyone. A recent addition to our movie collection, a continuation of one of my favorite TV shows, one that I am shocked that after over 20 years, Babylon 5 has returned with an animated movie. And the way this plays out and what's been said on Twitter and what's going on, it seems like if this does well, there is the potential for more of these coming out. So, an animated movie that starts off, takes place right near the end of the series as John Sheridan is leaving Babylon 5, and then turns into an exciting trip through multiple realities and going backwards and forwards through time, trying to find an anchor and find a way home. So we follow John Sheridan through all these different time frames and realities, and it's a real fun journey, and it shows a lot of kind of what if scenarios, as well as revisiting some favorite characters and time periods. It's really done well, and it works well for a movie because this really could have gone two ways. It could have been something that somehow moved the story beyond where the series and all the made-for-TV movies and everything ended, or I like kind of how they did this as sort of a test to see if they can do more, something that is very standalone and just inserted within the journey. And a few of the things that could have gone wrong turned out to be pretty great. One of the big ones, obviously, a large portion of the main cast, the actors, have died since the end of the series, and when you have so many prominent voices of important characters to the telling of the story of a universe that have passed on, it can be difficult to recapture the feeling of that original story. And in the behind the scenes, it's actually a pretty decent making of, and also talks a lot about the journey of Babylon 5, and discussing how there was even the question of whether they should even attempt to do this because so many people have passed on from that cast, that would it be right to even do that? And there's a lot of discussion to begin with, whether or not it was even going to happen. And the people they got to replace as voice actors for this animated feature, which gave them the opportunity to replace those characters, did a respectable job. It wasn't anyone who was a standout, oh my gosh, that was terrible, or disrespectful of the original actor. There's none of that. It all worked out pretty well, even if some of them were a little more noticeable than others, that it was someone else entirely. It worked out for what it was, completely. And the main focus was on John Sheridan, and Bruce is still with us, so that it worked out fine. So that was done well, and being animated, that's something that, there's so many different styles of animation, and whether you go a little more 2D or 3D, and just how you do the characters. And I think that for the most part, the stylistic choices that they made worked. It still kept the feeling of Babylon 5, and the combination of 2D with the 3D elements. It worked pretty well. I think visually it wasn't 100% perfect. I think sometimes in some of the slower scenes, the more dialogue heavy things, some of the animation felt a little stiff with some of the characters, but that's honestly just kind of nitpicking. It overall looked great, and I think where it was sold even better than with the characters was definitely with any of the ship designs or with Babylon 5 itself. Anything mechanical, I think, looked fantastic. I think they really sold all of that, and it was a fun journey to be able to explore this kind of exciting little side adventure that still felt like it had the heart of the series and true to the messaging of the series, and it didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel necessarily like something that was decades later. It's something that feels like a little lost story. And I'd say it's not my favorite of the Babylon 5 movies, but it's at least on par with the other made-for-TV movies that were released in the past. It's not an outlier. It doesn't stand out in any negative way. I think it turned out to be great, and it should be interesting to see what happens here. I think from what I've seen that it sold pretty well. I would expect there to be obviously the fans of the series supporting it, and I think it might also have benefited a bit from being such a long period of time, because not only are you going to have those fans who watched the show originally, But in the many years since then, you never know how many new fans have really been picked up over the years in finding the show on DVD or streaming services, and coming out on Blu-ray now. So I think that this will do well, and I really don't think that this is a one-time thing. I don't think this is the end. I think Babylon 5 is back in some limited capacity. I think that we will see more of these animated features in the future, at least one more, I think, and if that does well, who knows what's going to happen in the future, if that proposed reboot of the entire thing actually happens, or if we just get a few more of these animated stories to flesh out the universe and, call it a night. Who knows what's going to happen, but I do think that it is a movie that's worth your time if you're a fan of the series. It was worth the wait, and I think that it could bring about some great new stories.